would do a lot for making money, which this is still very solid today, especially if you have a truck or a minivan. Flip couches. So I'd go on Craigslist, get free or really cheap couches or other furniture. And then because I had a truck, I could offer delivery. And when we were talking about kind of what motivates people to do certain things, is that, again, people don't have the ability most of the time to pick up furniture themselves. And then to realize that, oh, cool, when all it comes to a service-based business, it's literally 90% of success is showing up. That's not wrong. It's literally what it is. It's okay. Not everything is for everyone. I mean, in my opinion, if someone came to me and said, what type of business should I start? I'd say pick a task that someone hates and offer that as a service. And what's amazing is, so people...
Cheers.
Cheers.
Welcome back to the Doughboys podcast. I'm your host, Logan, joined by my co-host, Josh McGill. Today, we also have a very special guest, Cody Keppel. Cody and I have been friends for a few years. Originally met him in the Hustle Buddies Facebook group. Shout out to that group. And then kind of, developed the relationship further through the OA Insiders Discord and Facebook. Cody has been selling for a while. He has experience in a lot of different businesses. He's going to be talking about automations and some other cool stuff that he's working on. So Cody, we're super excited to have you here.
Awesome. Well, glad to be here.
And so I know you have been selling for a while. Would love it if you could kind of start talking about your background and how you got into Amazon.
Yeah. Dude, I'm going to age myself a little bit here, but I first found out about selling on Amazon back in, I think, 2013. And I was still in university at the time. I was just looking for some extra ways to make money online. At the time, I ran a moving company. I ran it up here in Minnesota for 8 years and sold it a few years ago. As you know, with a business like that, it's very seasonal. So you do a ton of your work in the summer, and then winter, you're basically just scraping by for the next job. So I was looking for something to do to fill my time in the winter. My aunt, when I was younger, she was a power seller on eBay. So at first my thought was, I might sell some stuff on eBay. So I did what any, college kid at the time would do and went to Google and typed in, ways to make money online. And then I ran across some blog posts, and there were a bunch of ways. And one of them was this Amazon FBA. And I was like, what is that? I thought Amazon is just for books. I went and read more about it and saw, Amazon's not just books. Cool. I did some more research, found a couple Facebook groups, and then really just kind of started to dive in. At first, I started with used textbooks. Since I was at a college campus, we had plenty of books that the college would be like, hey, you paid $100 for this? Well, it's worth $1 now, even though 3 months have passed, because we're upgrading to the newest version where they added a couple extra commas and, used a thesaurus to change some words on page 27, and now this is worth $100 and the old thing is worth $1. So I took a bunch of stuff like that pretty much on consignment from other people, or they were like, hey, I don't care. I'd say probably the funniest thing that ever happened to me is I actually sold a book while I was at college, shipping to someone at my college.
Nice.
Yeah, that was super comical. I was like, maybe I should just go find this person's dorm room.
Funny enough, that actually happened to me too.
That's awesome.
One time.
Do you remember the book?
It was something for a theology class. I don't remember the exact book though.
Yeah, same. Mine was like so I went to, it's called North Central University here in Minnesota. So it's an Assemblies of God affiliated college. And it was something like the Gospel of Luke revisited or something. So it was a very, very niche topic that they would once a semester have like a class for. So yeah, super specific, just like what you're describing. But yeah, it was very funny. And that's how I learned also that you have to ship stuff. You can't just go deliver it to their house because you know where they live. It has to travel through the system for you to be completely protected. I started doing that, went with books. With books, you can get some pretty solid profit margins, but there is some issues with scaling and different strategies that you need to take in order to scale something like that out. And at the time, I didn't really think about, having a bunch of employees, getting good scanners and things like that, and how to hit all this, kind of use bookstores or how to talk and negotiate and get bulk stuff like that. It was too much work for me to, kind of knock on the doors, go to the stores and scan, one thing at a time, really slow. I couldn't scale well that way. So eventually I kind of ran into what people would call now the replens model. And I was like, this is really interesting. It's one of those things where you hear it a bunch of times and eventually it just kind of clicks for you at some moment. And it was me listening to this one guy talk about how he had a pyramid is what his inventory looked like. And that the base of any healthy business is all your replenishables, like stuff you can go back to, and that you don't just think about food like that, but someone's shampoo or a bike pump. It doesn't have to be products that are necessarily consumable, although those are easier to replen, but just things that people will go and continue to buy and that you can, continue to, purchase from somewhere profitably. And then that kind of changed my perspective of chasing, things that are going to make me $30 per sale to like, oh, I'm okay if this thing makes me $5, $6 per
Yeah.
sale.
How do you identify what is good to be replenishable?
The basics of that are, does it sell consistently? And so the number one tool for helping to determine that is called Keepa. And so they basically lay out a bunch of information that Amazon gives. They collect it at set time intervals to help create basically charts. So you can basically look at a chart, and if all the information is, there within the chart, you can kind of, in a way, count how many times it's selling. And then based on that, and then how many people are selling, things like that, you can determine, okay, well, if I want 2 weeks of inventory, I need to buy 10 of this thing. And then it's really just a matter of, okay, if you're trying to buy it, you sell it for $30, are you able to buy it for like $10, to make a decent amount of money? Are you only able to buy it for $18 where it makes you a couple bucks? And then just, figuring out, is it profitable?
Yeah, those replenishables are super important. Having those products that you can go back to over and over again. I think I heard this term first from Chris Grant, but he said business is built on base hits. So the replens aren't going to be, your crazy profit or ROI items, but they're consistent that you can go back to over and over again. And then I know all three of us here appreciate some good logistics. And when you know what's coming into your warehouse over and over again, the logistics of prepping and shipping it out are going to be easier too.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
You were actually just saying that before we started recording, how it makes life so much simpler when you know what's coming in, if it's like a bigger bulk of something rather than receiving one thing in 100 different boxes. I wanted to backtrack real quick. When you had this moving business and you were looking to make some extra money, it sounded like you were looking for something on the side. Did you ever dream that selling on Amazon would have ever blown up to as big as it is now, or it would have gone down the rabbit trail it had? Or were you just thinking it would be like a winter thing and the moving would be a big summer thing?
No, that's a great question. I found Amazon in like 2013, and initially it was kind of what you're describing. Moves are for the summer, Amazon's for the winter, and, just make a little bit of extra money, give myself something to do. And I obviously at that time had seen, hey, people can be successful. They can make this into a full-time business. That would be cool. But how do I do that? I don't, I hadn't quite figured it out. And it was actually in, I believe, the winter of 2016 that I kind of told my moving business partner at the time, hey, we got several $1,000s here in the bank. I'm going to kind of give this Amazon thing one more like push, and then we're going to see how it goes. And if it goes good, hey, let's keep it going. But if not, I'm putting a lot of time into this and not getting a crazy amount, out of it. So let's go ahead, and if it doesn't go well, let's figure out something else that we can do to occupy our time in the winter. And we had talked about like snow plowing, Christmas lights, different things like that. As far as other activities, we kind of synergize with the moving company. The big kicker, as I'm pretty sure one of you guys can ask this, is, hey, what changed? What was the aha moment? So one of the big aha things is I invested in myself and joined a couple Q4 groups. I really was still very new to understanding kind of like how one might maximize a fourth quarter of the year, like this time of year. So I joined some groups and got some good kind of leads and ideas on ways to think through products differently and educate myself and kind of find like-minded people to push and encourage me to be more efficient. And then we went from there.
I'm hearing, you had the moving company, you got Amazon and all the other stuff you do now, but also you're bringing up these other ideas of like snow plowing and other things. So I'm curious, would you say you've always been an entrepreneur and had that kind of entrepreneurial mindset?
Oh, 100%. My father, him, and then his father before him have owned a rental business back home. There's a national chain that does stuff pretty similar to what they do called Ready Rents for anyone listening. But they rent things like tables and chairs for graduations, post hole diggers, lawn mowers, forklifts, bobcats, a bunch of cool stuff. So they've done that, and that business has been around for almost 60 years now, which is insane. So I always had seen that But it was not until I was in high school and was trying to fundraise money for a senior trip that a teacher I went to a private school when I was younger, and a teacher there, she ran this little concession stand during lunch for us people to buy snacks like Hot Pockets, Zebra Cakes, Capri Suns, things like that. And she got frustrated with it, so she decided to close down because kids will be kids, and all they would do is complain about why don't you have ramen cups? Why don't you have M&Ms? Instead of just be happy that hey, this is here for you. And so she gave up. And one of the cool things our school would let us do, since we had smaller class sizes, is they would let us raise money throughout our like high school time being there, and then we could allocate those funds to go on a trip for a week in our senior year. So I decided, hey, if the school let me, I'm gonna open this little concession stand and sell some stuff and make some extra money. And so I did, and I think we ran that for like 2-3 years. That was definitely my first foray into.
That's cool. It's really interesting you share that. We had Chris Grant on the podcast a month or so ago, and he had a very similar story. He said his 8th grade year, they did that. They had like a teacher who was already selling some stuff, but then they, as their class, small class size, they went to the local Pizza Hut, made a deal with them to get the pizzas for like $5 a piece, bought them in bulk, came back, started reselling those to the kids to raise funds. And then he said he learned a lot. Like he learned, okay, we're selling pizza. Now we need to upsell them on a drink, or maybe they need some cookies to go with it, and learned how to maximize the AOV in 8th grade.
Yep.
So yeah, that's a really cool, interesting that you guys have that similar experience, and now you're both selling on Amazon.
Yeah, it's pretty cool when you really get involved in businesses. A lot of people want to go for like, oh, I want to invent the next Facebook. I mean, if I had $1 for every time I heard someone, especially when I was in college, say that, I'd have decent amount of money by now. But there's so much basic concepts and things that work, and they're not sexy. But if you can bring value, especially in today's age, if you can bring some convenience to people and make their life easier, you're going to be sitting pretty, which is really what Amazon's all about. Being able to bring something to someone's door, and sometimes the same day. It's insane.
Well, so what does your business operation look like as far as, your Amazon business? What are your sourcing methods? What's your team breakdown? Give us the whole operation.
I'm in an around 5,000 square foot warehouse right now. Some of that space is dedicated to what's called contract manufacturing. So there's a clean room with some equipment that helps us process like bulk dry goods. If you've ever been to a grocery store, you see how they have those bags of like, here's malted milk balls, here's, raisins or whatever, and they're in like little sealed bags, but they don't say any brand you've heard of. They say, oh, this looks like the store made this. Well, they hired what's called a co-packer or a contract manufacturer. And typically what they're doing is either they're sending them like, here's 2,000 pounds of malted milk balls, or they're basically saying, hey, we've developed this like hot sauce. Here's our recipe. Here's the bulk ingredients. Can you make this for us? And then, package and bottle it up. And that's what that space is all about. So we have stuff going on there, but in our normal kind of warehouse operation, I guess I'd say it feels like it's nothing special. I mean, there's pallet racks and there's a spot for inbound inventory. So as far as like sourcing product and stuff, the methods we use, like I really like the Keepa product finder. I love Keepa. I'd say I'm almost like obsessed with Keepa. I'm a huge fan of Keepa's API. Logan, as you know, I talk about it all the time. I'm also a huge fan of like storefront stocking. So if I find someone that thinks similarly to me in their sourcing methodology, or to where, let's say I saw that you were selling, the Equate brand. Well, cool. I know that comes from Walmart. I could go ahead and be like, okay, cool. Well, I'm gonna go look at your store. What other Equate branded things are you holding? And then I could then take that knowledge and go ahead and be like, all right, let's go look at just pop the Equate brand into Keepa and see what else is there. And then go ahead and make lists of those. But then the real value for me now has come down to just being able to continually track and monitor things. So being able to know when a store that I'm interested in adds a new product to their store, when, basically getting alerts from Keepa and stuff when a price meets, a condition that we were waiting for, and following up on those things. Those are some of the, I guess I'd say, the not so secret, but secret sauce to success.
Cody, I remember last time I had you on my YouTube, you were talking about some of these crazy sourcing methods that you have, and I remember I felt scared. I was concerned. It's like you have all these crazy methods and the ability to track so many things. It's like I just hope he doesn't do it against me.
Yeah, there are definitely some good storefronts that
Mhm.
of people that I know that we all know that I
Yeah.
get to watch, see what they add. Especially this time of year for anyone that's, curious. Hopefully you're listening to this before Q4 is over. Especially watching people's stores for products that they add that are merchant fulfill is huge. As pretty much this time of year when someone's adding something merchant fulfill, especially if they're experienced, you can be confident that either A, this product has never existed before, but they're pretty damn confident that it's going to work out, or B, that it's something that's about to take off. So it's definitely like, hey, where did this come from? Okay, cool. I'm gonna go find it myself and acquire it.
Why I totally see why you guys get along and talk about stuff, because definitely you think similar, if not the same way, about a lot of things. There was a lot of that stuff where I was like, "Yep, I've heard this before."
I've heard
But
this.
actually, the one that I was connecting with the most was when you started talking about your warehouse and you said it doesn't feel that special, because that was a weird, like, I would almost say like imposter syndrome, when you have a warehouse and you're running a warehouse and it feels like, wait, this isn't all that special, but like to everyone else who isn't running a warehouse, you guys are like, you're the warehouse. But then when you're running it, you feel like, well, like it's just me. Like it's just this. It's like, that is a weird sensation. I know what you're talking about, and I
Yep.
don't really know how to put it into words. Yeah.
Yeah, imposter syndrome is definitely a real thing. And I find, especially a lot of the experienced people I talk to seem to always kind of battle imposter syndrome. And what's amazing is, and I think important to take away, is that pretty much almost wherever you're at in business is that you're ahead of somebody.
Mhm.
And so there's knowledge that you can impart to somebody that is going to be completely new to them and be super impactful. And then a lot of the times people love to watch someone go on, the journey. Even if you were just, oh, I figured out how I start an LLC in my state. That's going to be new to 99% of
Yeah.
people. Going to have no idea and be like, that's amazing. How'd you do that?
Mhm.
But then that person's going to look at the person that has $1,000 in sales for the month. Be like, that's amazing. And that
Mhm.
person looks at, $1,000 a day. That's
Mhm.
amazing. And the fun thing is, as you get more experienced, see like what it's all about in scale. Is just getting a little bit better, every single day at a bunch of different things. And then, over time you compound those, and that's how you get to those, far steps. But it's a lot of work, don't get it twisted. It's a lot of work to get there.
Yeah, so speaking of that, you said you have 5,000 square feet now. Did you have any other warehouse before that? And even before maybe that first warehouse, did you start out of your house, or kind of
Yep.
walk us through that
Yeah,
progression?
yeah, I'll walk you through the progression. So, first area I ever had any inventory stored was in my college dorm room on my desk. And I guess funny side note, at that point, so what I would do a lot for making money, which this is still very solid today, especially if you have a truck or a minivan, flip couches. So I'd go on Craigslist, get free or really cheap couches or other furniture. And then because I had a truck, I could offer delivery. And when we were talking about kind of what motivates people to do certain things, is that, again, people don't have the ability most of the time to pick up furniture themselves. So by you being able to take this couch that someone's giving away because they don't want to move it or whatever, but you can put it in your pickup truck and deliver it to somebody, they'll pay you money for that. So that was probably my first really successful thing. I know it's a tangent, but I needed to pay a it was like my school's monthly payment plan to stay enrolled, and I needed an extra. I think it was $1,000 that I didn't have. I figured out that, oh, I could resell a couch because I brought a couch back to our dorm because we needed somewhere to sit, and got curious. Posted a picture of it on Craigslist. Asked like $60, free delivery, and then 3 hours later, someone had called me and was like, "Hey, can you bring that to my house tonight?" And they were like 15 minutes from the school. Convinced a buddy to help me load up the couch. Took it there, got $60, and was like, "Huh, I wonder if I can do that again." And then I kept doing it over and over. So even kind of before Amazon, people at school would call me Couchman. I mean, you guys know probably how small dorm rooms are. They're like 10 by 10 boxes that they put you in. I had I think my record was 13 couches in my
What?
dorm room. Yeah, 13 couches just stood up on their sides. I could basically not walk anywhere. My bed was as lofted up in the air as it could be, dinged up the walls so much that I lost my like housing deposit. My resident director and RA were both like super supportive of what I was doing. And I took it from, I think my record grossing week is one week I brought in like
Wow,
$4,500 from furniture.
that's
And it was
crazy.
funny 'cause some of the time I didn't even physically, I was like drop shipping basically,
What?
where I knew what it was. Is I would get you to commit to selling me a couch. I would take your pictures, description, and if I could get better pictures from you, I'd have you send those to me. I would take those, repost it as an ad, offer delivery, upcharge it, and then Josh would hit me up, be like, "Hey, can I buy it?" So I'd set to pick it up from you at noon, and I'd set to drop it off to Josh at 1, and just go boom, boom.
So you're the OG dropshipper, the couch
Pretty
man.
much.
So
Yeah.
Josh was actually my RA in college, and I'm curious, Josh, what would you have done if I had like 13 couches in my dorm room?
That's the funny thing that you say that. I was his RA, and college is the perfect place for that because I would have been so supportive. Honestly, I would have been supportive if you had stolen the couches from the lounge and sold those. Yeah, no, that's awesome.
Yeah, and I guess on a side note with supporting, like that's something that can be very challenging for people when they're starting out. Is a lot of times you seem to run into two camps. You either run into people in your immediate circle are like, hell yeah, go get it. That's awesome. Let's go. Or you run into people that are like, nah, you should go get a real job. You should go do this. What if this doesn't work? So it's really great when you find people that are going to support you and kind of push you along. And that's why like Discord communities, Facebook groups, and things like that can be so valuable when you start doing something, is you can find your people to kind of help push you along and encourage you to keep going, because business at any level is hard. Even when I was starting out with couches, there'd be days where I wouldn't find a couch. And I would literally, I didn't know what a bot was. Now I would just have a bot watch it for me. But I would basically sit on Craigslist and like, while I'm doing homework, I would refresh the page. See, oh, did anything with the word couch show up in the free section? Oh, cool. This one was here 5 minutes ago and it wasn't there before. I'm gonna look at it. Okay, it's good. Let's message the person. And I would grind it out like that. And at first, people thought it was weird. And again, then, people around campus knew me as Couchman. So they were very supportive. But even when people around campus were supportive, I ran into, you would think my parents might be some of my biggest supporters. They weren't necessarily not supportive. It was just like, this is a phase or a fad. It's gonna burn out, and therefore we want you to like get a real job. And then they kind of stopped arguing when I was like, hey, this week I brought in $4,500. They were like, okay. And then that transitioned into the moving company, and then things kind of went from there.
See, I like that about how you had talked about that with the Amazon maybe not working, going into the snowmobile, or like you're constantly taking situations you have and pieces you already have and potential like little tweaks, and you use the word synergizing. Like I love that word, but I also love that mindset and that business model you have of like, you had this couch thing, it was doing well, it was making money, and then that just like transitioned into the moving company, and that could have transitioned in like the snowmobile or the lights, or like ended up going Amazon. But I think that's really cool that you keep pivoting, and people think that you have to like start cold turkey or you have to start something brand new, and you just keep evolving, if you will, like into the next step. Like that's just really
Yep.
cool, I think.
And now I guess I'll take this time to talk about some things that did not work well, as I don't want to make it sound like everything I've touched has worked great, because it definitely hasn't. And it's okay. And so, I don't necessarily think this is just a super Amazon focused podcast, but it's okay. Not everything is for everyone. I mean, in my opinion, if someone came to me and said, what type of business should I start? What would I have the best odds of success at? I'd say pick a task that someone hates that is some form of labor or skill, and offer that as a service. And what's amazing is, so people oftentimes they focus too much on perfection, like, oh, I have to be the best car detailer out there. No. Most tasks when it comes to labor, it's a pass fail type deal when it comes to what's acceptable for the customer to get as far as work. And therefore, what you can do when you look and deal with contractors and stuff is they're mostly trash when it comes to communication and following up and letting people know what's happening with their schedule. And so if you can call people, communicate good scheduling, show people that you're professional. Like I've told my wife, I'm like, if I had to start over, she's like, what would you do if you had to start over? Would in theory probably take a dartboard or like dartboard, put a bunch of like different things on it, like welding, electrician, duct cleaning, car detailing, close my eyes, throw a dart over there, whatever it hits, pick that thing, get to a level where I can feel like, hey, I understand how this kind of works, or go get the training necessary to know how this works, and then begin to, hey, offer a service. Because I know when it came to the moving company, we called people back when they called. We followed up. We had people, we would get compliments all the time. Not only were our people polite, but the big thing was, hey, our movers before, like, they don't show up or they don't call us when they're running late. So then we're scared. And then to realize that, oh, cool, when all it comes to a service-based business, it's literally that 90% of success is showing up. That's not wrong. That's literally what it is. You could pick almost any service-based business and get yourself up to solid self-employed income relatively quickly if you just call people back and show up.
Yeah, that's so true. What immediately popped on my mind when you were talking about that is our experience running the prep center last summer. Like, at the end of the day, we're offering the same service as everyone else. We're prepping your stuff and sending it to Amazon. I know there's horror stories with some prep centers. Like, someone was telling me they had a prep center that didn't check expiration dates because they said they didn't have time. And like, there's these crazy things. Like, why would you do that? How can you be in business? But anyway, we're all offering the same service really and doing the same thing. And if we're, going to be more efficient or do things in a different way, that's to cut our own costs, not necessarily provide a better service. But what made us, do well and what our clients told us they really liked is that we actually communicated with them, that we talked to them every single day pretty much. Whereas other prep centers, they couldn't get on the phone with them. It would take a week, 2 weeks to get back on a message. So we were offering that same service, but we were actually showing up on a regular basis.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that is literally true for everything, which is awesome. I think it's so exciting for especially like younger people, because unlike me now, like my back, I was literally just today approached by a company in my building that does office installation, and they were like, hey, would you ever be interested in, like, I don't necessarily want to have to do the management of this. That guy and I've talked about streamlining their operations because he spends like a whole day invoicing people. And I'm like, that's nonsense. We could do that way faster. But I was like, my body just like, for a lot of service-based stuff, the one thing is you generally have to build to a decent scale level in order to fully remove yourself as the owner from operations. And that's what's wonderful about e-commerce stuff is there's so many different services like prep centers that you can go to where you can outsource a very big portion of your work. And then it's easier because the labor cost for like the sourcing aspect of the business, where you can kind of get that labor and skill at a much more discounted rate because it can go anywhere in the world. And therefore it makes kind of the sourcing portion, which is the other huge aspect to e-commerce, makes that easier to scale. And then you can slide in one person, you pay them like, 20 an hour to kind of be your final stopper as far as checking, and then kind of remove yourself from the operations that way. And doing that in a normal service-based business is a little bit more challenging because it just requires so much more profitability to pull it off.
So what are some ways that you use AI and automations and all that kind of stuff in your business, and maybe some ways that you've helped others too?
When I first started looking for kind of ways to make, my business better, it was, what am I spending a lot of time doing? One of the first things, like metrics, that I wanted to know was, I have an idea of when we prep stuff. Cool, we can do, let's say 500 units today. Like somebody did that. They worked, a 10-hour shift. Cool. That means that they did 50 units an hour. Those numbers are pretty easy to understand and are relatively accessible through tools like Inventory Labs, Scan Power, Amazon directly. They take a little bit of time tracking on your end, but you can pull in that data and figure it out. without a crazy amount of effort. But what I wasn't 100% sure about was, okay, for my like sourcing team, how much do they cost me when we buy something of their stuff? What does that number break down to? Because if say I'm looking at 50 cents a unit prep cost, and then it's actually also another 50 cents a unit, in acquisition cost to source it. That 50-cent swing, that might not be a great example because 50 cents normally wouldn't make or break a purchasing decision for us if the volume's there. But let's say it did. Then, me not knowing that and assuming that, oh, it's only 5 cents for me to like review and acquire the product. I could make some bad buys. And so for us, that was the first thing we really went to tackle is how can I basically get some type of purchase log, which we already had in, Sheets, and then we moved it into Airtable. But what can I do to get the amount of hours that were worked, to know how many leads we totally looked at versus how many we accepted? And then how can I break that into a number that's also like per unit, so then I can eventually then roll that in with my prep costs to know this was the total like door to door cost for this thing. So that way we can, know how profitable we're doing. And it was very interesting to see like different people like with different sales around. Like you could have people be where you're, paying like nickels to acquire stuff. Other days people would have bad days. And so you'd be looking at a lot more things like that.
Yeah, and you've built some tools now too. I know you get the lead list merger. If you want to talk a little bit about that and maybe anything else you've developed or are working on.
Sure. Yeah, lead list merger is something that I built earlier this summer. I'm sure most of you, if not all, are familiar with like Chat GPT and Google Bard and other like AI large language models like that. Um, but basically, I guess what lead list merger is it is like an aggregator. For it takes a bunch of lead list companies and their formats, where they generally like once a lead list company decides upon a format for their leads, they stick with that format. So we basically took all those formats and then taught like the code on the back end how to understand each of them. So then it could go in, and let's say you had your ASINs in column number 4, and then another lead list has it in column number 2. Well, then it would go ahead and see, oh, I'm looking at one of Logan's lists. It's in column 4. Cool. So it would know this is where all the ASINs are, and that would go ahead and grab all of those. But then on our sheet on the aggregation output section, it would go ahead and write all the ASINs, whether they were in column 2, 4, or 7 on the list. It would write it all into one spot. That way, a user could go ahead and basically share a bunch of like lead list links really quickly, and go ahead and get just one nice big file in the end that then they could go ahead and check to see like, hey, how good are these products now? And for us, the nice thing is when you're involved in an industry for so much and so long, really when you're building stuff, you're solving problems for yourself. And then it just so happens that, hey, if I have this problem, there's probably a crap ton of other people that have this problem. For me, since I have some lead lists that go back to like 2016. So I think in total, when I aggregated everything, I have like 40 something thousand leads in a database now, and they're all scattered. There was stuff that I like forgot existed in certain Google Drives, but it was cool. Okay, instead of me we kind of started a project like this like 2 years ago, but it was I had my VAs and my lead buyer go through, and what they were doing is, okay, we're on this Google Drive. I want you to type in, this lead list name, search for it in Google Drive, open up those things, and then, go copy column B, paste it on this one tab in column B, and then do that over and over again for each list. And we were nowhere near done. And yet we were spending days of time to aggregate this information. And so I was like, well, there's got to be a better way. And so I did go ahead, and I think a couple years ago, I got it quoted by somebody, and it was, I don't know, several $1,000s to have something like that built to where it would run to the level that I wanted it to. And yet, because of how much technology's changed now, I mean, again, it's not like you could just tell it to happen and it would happen. It still takes like work, and there's a little bit of a skill barrier, but it took me maybe like I don't know, probably like a couple weeks to a few weeks of kind of working back and forth with ChatGPT to get something up and running that had the level of kind of customization that I needed to in order to make like the merging like of all the different late list formats work. And again, that's just, that'd have been a crazy amount of money for me 2 years ago,
Yeah.
which for most Amazon sellers and people is just that's out of their reach. They're not
Mhm.
going to drop that amount of money to do it.
Yeah, it's crazy how much easier things have gotten with AI and the new technology that's come out. And what's even crazier to think about is that a lot of this AI and new tech is still in its infancy.
Oh yeah.
So if we've seen like
Gonna
this
be crazy.
exponential growth and ease of development over the last few years, where are we going to be in a decade?
Oh yeah.
It's
Well, I
insane.
support our robot overlords, so it's fine.
Yes. Cool. And then you've also got OA Insiders. So do you want to talk a little bit about what that is? Yeah, if you want to kind of intro it, and then I'll talk about my personal experience because I think
Sure.
I've been in there since day one.
Yeah, pretty much, man. I think you've been around that long. Yeah, so OA Insiders is a like private Facebook and Discord group for Amazon sellers. We pretty much now in the beginning we were focusing on sellers that basically were more experienced, so we weren't going to run into your kind of run of the mill like very basic question that
How
a
do I
newer
get
seller might
ungated?
ask, like how do I get ungated, what is keepa, why do I care, that type of stuff. And so what we wanted to focus on was a community for like-minded sellers that are trying to grow, as the problems that you face when you're doing low, mid, high six figures into seven figures are similar than what you would be dealing with when you're trying to sell your first $1,000. And so we wanted to get rid of that noise and focus on the noise of how can you help someone grow. So initially we did a lot of stuff like with VAs and things like that. But then after a while, when I would say I felt like I kind of personally found my voice and passion, we switched a lot to focusing on like automation and database, like data management. You can, I'm sure you heard the three of us talk tonight about how important like data points are and things like that. And so I'm so passionate about like people being able to understand how they can control their own data, because if you wanted to know, like, hey, is this headset that I'm trying to sell, is this merchant fulfill? Like, did I buy this with intentions to merchant fulfill or to FBA that? Well, maybe your tool doesn't collect that piece of data, and yet that would be valuable for you if you were attempting to go replenish something. But you don't have that piece of information because you're relying on another tool to give this to you. Well, you might ask the tool, hey, can you make this extra column of data available? And they'll say, sure, we'll keep it under advisement. And then they never do anything. And yet perhaps that would be a very crucial thing, especially like in a time like Q4, to help you make purchasing decisions. And if you control your own data, like for me, if I want to know, is this merchant fulfill or FBA? Like, and I want to track that moving forward, that is literally a like 2-minute process for me to add in that information to my database and be able to begin to start to collect that. And then if I want to go back and do it, then, kind of retrofit it, then it's just, okay, someone has to go through what we used to have and make those, assign those things. But then again, when it's done, all that data's there.
Lots of good stuff in the group. I mean, I feel like it started in August of 2021. Does that sound
I
about
think
right?
so. Yep, that sounds right.
And yeah, I think I joined that month, and 2 years later, still in there. But yeah, I've learned so much. That's a great group of people. Really helped me scale my business. Learning like that was crucial to my success, and switching over to OA and then figuring out how to scale and outsource. Highly recommend the group if you guys want to check it out. We will link it down below. And then yeah, Cody has some other stuff that we talked about, the leadless merger tool. And yeah, Cody, thank you so much for joining us. Viewers, thanks for watching.
Yeah.
Peace.
Thanks, guys.